And I'm going to enable Facebook. And just to reassure everyone that when we start our conversation, then we stop the recording and the Facebook Live so that that part of the program is personal just to the folks who are here. So welcome again. We are gathering for our Sunday Dharma, and we are studying Lojong, or the 7 points of mind training. We're going through it quite leisurely. We started at the beginning of the year. Actually, we started in October, and we're just on the 31st slogan. So it's a series of 50 slogans. And so we begin with opening our hearts, taking refuge, creating the aspiration that we're learning together, of course, to relieve our own suffering, but also the suffering of all sentient beings. And then with that intention, I'll give a talk on the slogan today that we're looking at, and then we'll have some sort of discussion and contemplation. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. As earth and the other elements, together with space, eternally provide sustenance in many ways for the countless sentient beings, so may I become sustenance in every way for sentient beings to the limits of space until all have attained nirvana. As the Sugatas of old gave birth to the bodhicitta and progressively established themselves in the training of a bodhisattva, so I too, for the benefit of beings, shall give birth to that bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. At this moment, my life has become fruitful. I have realized my human life. Today I am born into the family of the Buddhas. Now I am a child of the Buddhas. From now on, I will forthrightly perform the actions befitting my family. I will act so as not to degrade the faultlessness and discipline of my family. Just as with a blind man finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow bodhicitta has been born in me. This is the supreme amrita which destroys death, the inexhaustible treasure which removes the world's poverty. It is the supreme medicine which cures the world's sickness, the tree which provides rest for beings weary of wandering on the paths of existence. It is the universal bridge on which all travelers may pass over the lower realms, the rising moon of mind which dispels the torment of the kleshas. It is the great sun which puts an end to the obscurity of ignorance, the pure butter which comes of churning the milk of the holy Dharma. For travelers wandering the paths of existence, seeking happiness from objects of enjoyment, It is supreme bliss near at hand, the great feast which satisfies sentient beings. Today, witnessed by all the protectors, I have welcomed the sentient beings and Sugatas, Devas, and Asuras rejoice. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So we are in the very, very practical section of Lojong. It's called the 7 Points of Mind Training, and we're in point 6, the disciplines of mind training. So these are the ways we're pointing out to ourselves where our practice is weak, where our mind is weak, and how do we cultivate attention to those weaknesses and build strengths. So today is you would think is a very easy slogan. It's certainly easy to understand. Don't malign others. So of course we know this. What is even more interesting is to figure out why it's such a strong, enjoyable habit that is difficult to let go to. Where and how do we see the pleasure we get and attach to that pleasure, so it makes it harder to let go of maligning others? So there are a couple of slogans that go together. So if we're going to not malign others, an alternate translation is don't meet abuse with abuse. And there's sort of a subset, don't wait in ambush, and don't bring things to a painful point. So when we're thinking about maligning others, this is actually our current culture. So there's an excitement when we get in a good cutting remark. We have a culture that praises malicious banter. You know, if we look at our comedians, if we look at how we sort of twist the knife in a little bit, sometimes with family and close friends. And one of the images that the commentary gave is, don't act like a long-bladed chisel that digs deep into other people's shortcomings, or don't make a habit of being like you're carrying a spear, always ready to stab. So there are these old cultural slogans, that really are very current today. And so if we then say, okay, we're joining in, it's so much fun to sit, and we feel, that little piece of joy when we get the exact right cutting remark about some person that we see as an enemy, calling back to our opening prayers, or someone that obstructs us, etc., etc. There's that secret pleasure of I am better than them and I know it, and I am not them and I'm happy that I'm not them. And in that moment, we are concretizing self and other. We're building and strengthening self and other. And what we're forgetting is how can we see the suffering of the other, take in that suffering, and offer what is needed? All of Lojong goes back again and again to the compassionate heart and the particular training of Tonglen, which is seeing the suffering and finding a way to alleviate that suffering and offering what is needed into the world. So one of the very sweet quotes in one of the commentaries is, "Let us not utter a word that will harm or hurt. Strive always to praise the good qualities of others without blaming this or that person." So that's our goal. And as we get to the subset, one of the instructions is, all right, we're working on mindfulness so that we see the urge to join in the gossip, to join in the maligning, to join in the political discussions, to rejoice in, the news that's our side versus the news that's their side. But the simple subset begins with, just don't be ill-tempered. Don't be always in a bad mood reaching out like that spear to prick. And the quality of don't wait in ambush is actually about revenge. So all of those long discussions we have in relationships of, you're in an argument, the argument gets heated, the person hurts you, and then everything you've been holding back, well, you did this, and you did this, and you did this, that revenge going forward. And that one is followed by destroy all rationalizations. Well, they did that to me, so I'm going to do this to them. And then the qualifier is almost like kids on a playground. Don't bring things to a painful point is another translation. Don't strike at weaknesses. So if you think at kids on the playground and somebody hits somebody and they go, well, your mother does this, your father does this, you're that. What's interesting about this one, it's using the weak point of a person to humiliate them. And the beautiful contemplation that Pema gives for this group of slogans is, consider all the pain on this earth that comes from not making friends with yourself and not being willing to communicate with the person who for you is a troublemaker. And so we're not looking at what is painful to us that we don't want to see. Where is our anger? Where is that secret satisfaction? And then we're thinking of those who harm us, keeping them so far away, keeping our anger so present as a blinder. Whatever it is, whether it's anger or fear, not being willing to communicate to find out where is the pain that this person is experiencing that is causing these actions that I find so painful. So the general instructions is, this is what it's like to be a normal human being in samsara, but we aspire to being a dharmic human being in samsara. So we see, how very easy it is for us. It may be political things, it may be sangha issues, it may be your community issues, where you're opening to weakness of joining in the maligning, joining in the ill temper. What gives rise to your ill temper? Where are your trigger points? And then seeing, wow, right now, my Dharma practice isn't strong enough to hold back all the venom I want to just shed out. This is exactly where I have to be mindful. This is exactly where I have to place my attention. And this is exactly where I have to be a watchman to say, every time we start this discussion, I go right into it. Like for me, every time we start a discussion on sexism, I'm right there. My temper goes up. I can find all the faults. Wow, that is right when I need Dharma armor. And so we are aspiring to bring our Dharma into daily life and to strengthen the capacity of a well-practiced person that doesn't return insults, that doesn't return hostility, that doesn't strike back when hit, that doesn't return humiliation when humiliated. But we really need extraordinary commitment to our practice and to our mindfulness and to sort of not relaxing into the cultural habits, the friendship habits, all of the ways that these kinds of behaviors are supported, encouraged, and even praised as marks of strength, whereas not returning insults, not returning hostility, not hitting back when hit, not returning humiliation for humiliation is considered weakness. So it's going against the grain of our habits, going against the grain of our culture, going against the grain of how we've set up what a friendly cup of coffee is even. So let's just sit with this a minute so we see two things. Remember the last time you got into one of these discussions where you were just right there. This person is this way, this way, this way, and this way. This group is this way, and this way. And recall in the moment the shift from your open friendliness to the hardening of ill temper, and that kind of like trickle of enjoyment of getting the exact piercing remark that is the best joke of cutting, that really, when you think of all the jokes about ex-President Trump's orangeness, who could make the best joke about the makeup and the hair? There's that sense of inner satisfaction. And what is that? And if you feed that inner satisfaction in the habit, it's wanting more pleasure. So you want more of those jokes. One of the examples they gave was from these old lectures to a group in a monastery. And they said, well, if you don't have a plate, you can't take it to the table and get more food. So that little joy is our plate so that we can go and pile on more and more, feeding that habit. So there's that inner satisfaction, seeing how it is actually a poison that tastes good, and the sense of where you need to fortify. Like, where is it after you leave your meditation that you just relax your mindfulness, that watchman at your senses, and let go so that you jump in with both feet to that kind of conversation, that invitation to join in the maligning. And even how strengthened you have to be to feel you can put the spear down, that you're always on guard for being hurt and you want to prick, prick, prick before you get hurt. So let's sit with this a moment, and then we'll have time for discussion. So remember, as we're working with this, we're talking about committing to a long road of training, a lifetime of training. None of these slogans are meant to shame anyone. They're not meant to bring up inner judgment or shame. They're meant to point out this is difficult. This is why it's difficult. These are the repercussions if we continue the same way we've always been. And what support do we need to change our habits? What kind of mindfulness might we hold if it were for even the meal after the Sunday talk, or even traveling to the meal after the Sunday talk? How alert do we have to be before we fall into an old habit? So for now, with a sense of humor about our weaknesses, let's go into the discussion rooms for maybe 10 minutes, because this has a lot in it. How much we enjoy, how much the culture supports it, and how hard it is to change a habit. So you'll be invited to go to a chat room. If you'd like to sit in silent contemplation, you may. We'll give this about 8 minutes and then come back for a full group discussion. So we have our own chat room.
It's really, really interesting stuff. It's like such a gotcha.
That one line of Pema's of the secret satisfaction.
It's killer.
Yeah.
It is. And I just, as you were saying, I was just like running all of the times. And also then remembering some that I didn't engage in, and I felt like I was a wimp.
That's good.
You know, it felt like I should have stuck it for myself. I should have. And then as time goes by, you still hold that. But the thing is gone. And then you're like waiting, I wonder if I'll run into that person again and I can show them that I'm strong. Stupid. It's stupid.
There is a lot.
Yeah. It's like the gauntlet. They've thrown the gauntlet down and I have to protect my spear or whatever it is.
Yeah, whether it's reputation or
Absolutely.
sense of
being, like being included, being smart, being this, being that, and I'm in the club. That whole gamut of stuff. And actually, that is a wedge that is used probably on TikTok a lot. I mean, not that you have to say that, but it's the wedge that people use.
Well, I can't even imagine growing up in this world where this is how we're taught to relate to people.
Absolutely not. But I mean, if I had a child, I don't know how I would protect them from that. Protect maybe is the wrong word, but or maybe it's the right word. But yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, really interesting. What you wind up doing then is not only wanting to pierce, but then you turn the sword on yourself by feeling inadequate or, yeah. That thing that Pema said though is amazing, but also the thing about the plate. You know, if you don't have a plate, if you just like, if that's what you think, you know. Or sometimes people will say, well, what do you think about that? You know, and then you're forced into the spotlight of this whole negative conversation. And again, if you don't reply, you're a wimp.
But that's an important point. It's not necessarily about if we're in a situation of injustice, it's not about not replying, it's how you respond.
Yeah. Yes, and the same thing with being a wimp. It's not about responding or not about stepping back. That's the thing that's so tricky. And that whole Tibetan thing is like showing the other cheek or whatever the phrase is does not mean that you don't stand up for yourself, but it's the how that's important. Which requires a tremendous amount of practice and discipline, because you can easily take the easy choice, which is not to respond. The harder choice is actually to stand up for justice in a just way. Tricky. It's hard to figure how to do that, And I'm sure there's a lot of ways that you screw up, but does it automatically tell you when the time is up? Is there Alexis in there?
No, I have to watch the time.
Alexis, don't say it out loud.
But like if we're in conversations and we start talking about like shared history and it's easy to get into. It's sort of fun to.
Yeah, and I said, and she said, and they said, and I said, I was just thinking though, the Tibetans laugh a lot, and some of their jokes are a little edgy. So it's about understanding the delivery, and it's about understanding who you're saying it to and how they receive it. You always see them laughing together. Not always, but you see them laughing together. The joke is together, not separate. Very hard. And I guess that's where trust comes in.
Couple more minutes. I love these because there's so much to.
Well, I'm feeling like, man, damn, I missed. Oh, I can look it on YouTube or Facebook. Is there like a form now that you can?
It's almost ready.
Oh yeah, you know.
We're working on it. Yeah.
But I didn't know in Facebook you could do like a Zoom thing. I didn't know because I stay away from Facebook like the plague. I do. It blocks you off from a lot, but it also protects you from a lot. Oh, that'll be great. That'll be like a winter project to go through them. Yeah, because they're great. I would like to see some of your books before I go. I love that term. Is this one? No, there's this one. Is this one? You always were a good speaker, teacher.
I for this one, I just kept seeing kids on the playground.
Yeah.
Your mother wears cowboy army boots or something.
Yeah, right. Or worse. Yes. Yeah. And that kids playground fear of somebody finding the key to that, like having seen it.
Well, and for people who grew up in the same town and stayed there, like
which
you're a crybaby from something that happened.
Which can be a very comforting thought, except if you're,
yeah,
have you been targeted?
Yeah. So I'm letting people know that the rooms are going to close in 2 minutes.
Yeah. That one's like, it's like fast. I love these people that wrote these books. I love them. And thought about them and understand human nature so very well. I mean, this stuff is old. And I know that I lay in wait for people. My brother was the worst, because he was a slayer. His sword was really long and pointed. He was a slayer. Partially because he was gay. He was like ready to slice down anybody who got in his face about his choices. Not useful. I got slain a couple times. Where the moving rainbow is coming from. It's over there. It's lovely.
Okay, people are still coming back. Must be good discussions. There was good oh, okay, now everyone is coming back. Okay, lovely. So before we go into group discussion, large group, I just want to make one caveat and one example. So this doesn't mean, the not returning hurts, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean that we don't see injustice and look for the skillful means to change. So if we go back to that opening prayer, it's, may I and my enemy move to enlightenment. So it's a bigger picture of skillful means. How do we move the enemy? Being really mindful. And it may be that the only thing the enemy can hear, so-called enemy, is an expression of a fierce stop. So you would manifest the appearance of fierceness, but the soft heart of compassion. So it's about how you're holding your mind in every situation. And then, so I don't want it to be confused with not working for change, how we work for change. But the other example is, I think quite a wonderful example. When I was working on the library in India, there was a huge disagreement about the major sculpture. And because somebody was fired. The person who was fired got really, really angry. So first they went, the Tibetans evidently have a council for each village. So first she went to the council for the village and got everybody riled up, and everybody was marching over to the library. Why was this person fired? And then everything settled down because, of course, there was a good reason. But she wasn't satisfied, so she went to the Tibetan Congress. So you can imagine if your little argument in your community was taken to the U.S. Senate. So she went to the U.S. Senate. His Holiness is really bad. He's doing this, this, and this. He's limiting my religious freedom. And and His Holiness is just smiling and keeping going, getting his vision going. He didn't lift a finger to in any way explain the situation. He didn't point out that his instructions weren't followed, not to fire the person, to put their sculpture in the background, to let them go gently. So he didn't say, well, I was right, you didn't pay attention, it was others who didn't do it right. And then finally, when the person was, at the height of going to the Tibetan Congress, the Dalai Lama sent out a letter to each of the monasteries saying, oh, and the Dalai Lama didn't say, this person is wrong, this person is right. The Dalai Lama just thanked His Holiness for working on the library and doing so much for the Tibetan people. So it's a different way of handling, which we all might feel painful in terms of someone trying to destroy our reputation or harm us in some kind of way. So I'm going to let go of the live Facebook now. Let's do a quick dedication. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So and stop